Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today I had a pretty massive climb in the Open Great League to get back to the global leaderboards with a very unexpected Pokemon, HAWLUCHA. What intrigued me about HAWLUCHA was the fact that I felt like it destroyed a lot of the very common DGen leads that I was seeing. It obliterates Bug Bite Shadow Fortress, it shuts down Mightyena, and it does a really nice job at beating up on the Mud Slappers. Now, HAWLUCHA is definitely not a Pokemon that is recommended for consistent elo gains, but against all odds, I was actually able to go very positive with it, pairing it up with a Shadow Celio save switch and the ever-deadly Mimikyu as a closer. So without further ado, let's hop onto the matches, and our target has been acquired in the first match, HAWLUCHA into Shadow Mightyena. My opponent banks energy, save switches into Tinkaton, but I don't think Tinkaton is going to appreciate this Flying Press. Flying Press connects, Tinkaton takes so much neutral damage, and now I can pivot out and send in Mimikyu. With the built-in disguise, they're always going to fire off the Bulldoze just to lower my defense and be able to actually damage me with charge attacks. However, I have a pretty evil idea here. I know that I have a Flying Press already banked on the HAWLUCHA, so I'm just going to shield up with the Mimikyu and try and farm down. My opponent's switch timer is up, they can pivot back into the Mightyena, but they're going to be forced to throw energy or I will make it to a second play rough. My opponent tries for the farm down, they're unable to get it, and now if they end up shielding, they're just getting one shot by the Flying Press. They no shield, Mightyena gets KO'd, and in the back, they have their own Mimikyu. I'm going to bring in HAWLUCHA and fire off the triple resistant Flying Press just to break the disguise, and once the disguise is broken, then I can send in Shadow Celio. Shadow Celio does have a pretty decent matchup into Mimikyu, especially once you get that disguise broken. These Shadow Powder Snows hit for way too much damage. This Mimikyu is actually on Thunder running a very spicy moveset. I'm going to farm up and full send the Surf. I feel like my only lose con would be my opponent calling a bait. They do end up calling the Surf, and then immediately resigning the match. Hopping into game number 2, and our core breaker has arrived as I lead HAWLUCHA into Fearow. When I was building this team, I realized that Fearow would be a core breaker, and I was not hoping to see it too often. Unfortunately, Fearow's here in game number 2, so this is going to be a pretty tough one. My game plan for Fearow leads was pretty simple. Save switch into the Celio, no shield the Drill Peck, and then I have a bunch of energy for whatever my opponent decides to send in. They ended up bringing in Seismitoad, which works out pretty nicely for me. I can end up losing the zeros here and then go for a massive farm down with HAWLUCHA. HAWLUCHA energy is going to be really annoying for the Fearow, and I should be able to exit pretty close to the back-to-back Flying Presses. Seismitoad will go for the Icy Wind, and then my opponent makes a really great play. They save the Seismitoad, and they pivot back into the Fearow. Flying Press does get the shield, but I'm forced to bring in Mimikyu, and I still feel like I'm not in an amazing spot. I will put up a shield here because I do want my defense stat to stay intact. I'm not taking a lot of peck damage, and I would love to keep it that way. Now I'm just going to be full set of the play rough, guaranteeing the final shield or the knockout. My opponent no shields, Fearow gets KO'd, and in the back, they have Shadow Kanto Ninetales. I actually feel like I'm in a very comfortable position in this game because my disguise is still intact. My opponent fires off the Weather Ball, breaking the disguise, but I don't take any damage. And even though my defense is now at -1, I'm never in any danger of being embered down. Shadow Sneak will be shielded. My opponent should always try and go for a catch at some point, and then when they do, I should be able to bring in HAWLUCHA and low kick down the Seismitoad. Because the Seismitoad is completely energy dry. There's the catch attempt, in comes Seismitoad, I send in HAWLUCHA. Their only play is to try and farm down, but even that is just not going to matter. HAWLUCHA gets the Flying Press, deletes the Kanto Ninetales, and we're able to get the win. We move to game number 3, HAWLUCHA, this time going to be leading into Altaria. This is a very bad matchup. I throw one low kick save switch into the Shadow Celio, and my opponent responds with Empoleon. So far, we're off to a truly terrible start. Walled on the lead, walled on the save switch. So what is the plan? Now, a lot of the times, people might consider just playing the zeros here. However, playing the zeros would actually be a pretty big misplay. If I play the zero shield scenario, the Empoleon will be outside of 5 low kick range, meaning they would make a super effective Drill Peck into my HAWLUCHA. However, if I end up playing the ones, then even though my Powder Snows are double resisted, with the extra Powder Snow damage, I should be able to put them into a range where I can actually low kick down without having to burn a shield. It's a very small optimization, but look how this can change the game. Now I can bring in HAWLUCHA, I'm going to get a massive 5 low kick farm down, and importantly, I don't have to burn a shield. I send in Mimikyu, in the back is Tinkaton, and the fact that I'm not at a shield disadvantage or have lost almost my entire HAWLUCHA means that I think that I can actually win this game. Shadow Sneak lands, very nice damage onto the Tinkaton. Tinkaton will fire off the Bulldoze just to burn the disguise. So Bulldoze is going to land. I don't get debuff from the Bulldoze just from breaking the disguise. I can overfarm and CMP tie. This Shadow Sneak obviously is going to be knocking out the Tinkaton. My opponent will not put up the Protect Shield. They're going to trust in Altaria to try and close out the game. I farm up energy, pivot back into HAWLUCHA, and I'm firing off Flying Press. Even though Flying Press is resisted, it is one of the most efficient charge attacks in the game. So even though it's resisted, it does actually do more damage than a neutral Aerial Ace. They fire off the Sky Attack, taking the knockout, and now the game comes down to this. Can I make the back-to-back Shadow Sneaks? Altaria does have a decent amount of residual energy, so this is going to be very close. We've basically been countered on the lead and the swap, but with energy management, we've made it very close. Will we be able to get there? Yes, we win charge attack priority over Altaria. That's as close as it can get. But the decision to play the 1s instead of the 0s in the mid-game to set up the farm down for HAWLUCHA completely flipped the game on its head. We move to the next match, leading HAWLUCHA into Tinkaton. On paper, this should be a pretty bad matchup, but if you're familiar with the Togekiss Tinkaton matchup, you know that, honestly, it feels worse for the Tinkaton than it does for the Togekiss. I know Flying Press is only neutral here, but that did an absurd amount of damage on a Tinkaton. Tinkaton fires off Gigaton Hammer. I'm going to keep farming. They go for the catch attempt as they send in Azumarill. So far, my opponent is running ABA Fairy. I decided to bring in Mimikyu. I'm already down a shield, so I may as well utilize the built-in shield that Mimikyu's Disguise offers to ensure that that charge attack does no damage. Now, I can overfarm quite significantly, fire off the Shadow Sneak, and Shadow Sneak is going to be doing some solid damage onto the Azumarill. Azumarill is going to no shield. I probably just get knocked out here, but I'm pretty okay with that, as that will allow me to get Shadow Celio on the field. Play Rough lands, and I actually could have made it to a Play Rough of my own, so a bit of a misplay by me. Shadow Sneak will barely miss the knockout, and now I can send in the Celio. My opponent reveals in the back, they have Florges, they're running triple Fairy, and I have HAWLUCHA. However, HAWLUCHA is pretty sick, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to win this game anyway. My opponent ends up shielding the Body Slam bait. I'm always going to be no shielding because Trailblaze will not knock me out. I've mentioned it many times in many videos, but I have the rank 1 Shadow Celio. We're tanking that, no problem. Surf is going to be no shield, and now I can pivot into HAWLUCHA and go for the CMP tie. HAWLUCHA does have the higher attack stat by far. Flying Press is going to get the shield, and by getting that final shield, I've guaranteed to win the game. The only thing I have to watch for is a switch in a Tinkaton. When it happens, we just fire off the Flying Press. Flying Press easily going to be knocking out the low HP Tinkaton. My opponent only has like 1 HP remaining on their final 2 Fairy types, and they will resign the match. Hopping into the next match, we pick up a pretty okay lead HAWLUCHA into Shadow Celio. Even though we're hitting for super effective, we're taking super effective damage back, so I grab a shield with Flying Press, and then switch my own Celio into the mirror. With the rank 1 Shadow Celio, I know I'm going to be losing every single CMP tie, so I'm always just going to look to try and overfarm to hide that information from my opponent for as long as possible. They fire off a ton of Body Slams, I wait the turn and fire off a Body Slam of my own. I just want to try and constantly overfarm, make sure I have a ton of residual energy. My opponent brings in a low kick Shadow Annihilate, and I will be able to make it to a Surf. Surf is going to hit for big damage. Now I can pivot into Mimikyu. My opponent is going to make the Rage Fist, but I'm very okay just burning my Disguise here. I'm not going to take any damage. My defense will be at -1, but I will still have both Protect Shields intact. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon. Oh, look at that. It's a Shadow Toucanon. This is an incredibly cool pick. Unfortunately, I think that I'm in quite a lot of trouble here. Even though I was up a shield, Shadow Toucanon is just so incredibly fast. Add to that the fact that my fast move pressure is double resisted, and I'm in quite a lot of trouble here. They're going to make it to another Drill Peck. I have to watch for a potential catch attempt or a snipe attempt, as the Celio does have energy. Back in comes the Celio. I pivot into my own as they fire off a move. This catch now puts me in a winning position, because I can just send in HAWLUCHA. HAWLUCHA is going to get the low kick down unless they throw energy, and if they throw energy, then they don't have a move to fire at the Mimikyu. So, I have Mimikyu with a Play Rough loaded. I just have to watch for the switch. No switch comes through, and then just click the Play Rough. Shadow Toucanon is an absolute terror, but what it does not have is any kind of bulk. Play Rough takes the knockout, and we're able to get the win. We move to the next game, HAWLUCHA into Morpeko. Now this is a very good lead. Even though Morpeko does hit us for super effective damage, in the 2s, HAWLUCHA does have the ability to low kick down. I did end up seeing quite a few Morpekos, and Morpeko is very bad for my backline, so I'm pretty happy to catch them on the lead, as HAWLUCHA's low kicks are just shredding through this Pokemon's health bar. My opponent did go for the Psychic Fangs, which makes sense, that's their fastest super effective damage, but in the 2s, even with the debuffs, I can just simply out-damage them. I imagine my opponent will probably try and pivot out here, and they do as they send in a regular Celio. Now I can go for the Flying Press. Flying Press lands. Look at the damage. Oh my goodness. Flying Press is one of the most efficient charge attacks in the game. It's 90 damage for 40 energy. It's even better than Aura Sphere. Although watch this, you are about to watch one of the most disgusting farm downs you have ever seen in the history of Go Battle League. My Shadow Celio double resisted, getting the full farm down and getting exactly 100 energy. Back in comes more Pekko just to get washed away by a Body Slam. Their final Pokemon in the back is another Shadow Toucanon, and I farm up to the Body Slam plus Surf. Even if they call it, they're going to lose a ton of health here. My opponent puts up the shield, and it's just a Shadow Celio sweep. We're taking all 3 knockouts. Surf takes down Shadow Toucanon, and we're able to get the win. We pick up a decent lead in the next match, HAWLUCHA into Ninetales. Now this is the regular Ninetales, not the Shadow. The Shadow is definitely preferred. HAWLUCHA does win the 1s and 2s against Shadow Ninetales because after the Shadow Weather Ball, they can never Ember you down as long as you have a good HAWLUCHA. Against the regular, I'm not too familiar with the matchup, but after landing a Flying Press, it appears that I can just shield once, farm down, and exit with a decent amount of energy. So it looks to be a still pretty good matchup overall for HAWLUCHA. So I exit up a ton of energy. My opponent is going to wait for quite a bit before sending in Jumpluff. This is pretty bad. I end up saving HAWLUCHA energy, pivoting out into the Mimikyu. Energy Ball is going to be breaking the disguise, but this is a matchup where Mimikyu ends up struggling quite immensely, because Mimikyu is forced to rely on neutral damage, and Jumpluff can just take neutral damage for days. So I'm going to be full send of the play rough, but my opponent doesn't really have a reason to shield. They can always absorb that damage, and I believe in Acrobatics into a -1 Mimikyu will just about take the knockout here, and it does. My Mimikyu will get KO'd. I'm going to bring in the Shadow Celio. My opponent will be able to make an Energy Ball, and I'm doubling down. I'm committing all Protect Shields, and I'm keeping my Celio as healthy as possible. In the back is their own Mimikyu, and unfortunately, this game is over. I zero bubble the Body Slam, as that's just going to break the disguise, but realistically, I don't see a path forward to winning this game. I will make a Surf, and Surf will guarantee the first Protect Shield. I have a ton of energy on HAWLUCHA, but I don't think an Aerial Ace will take the KO. I switch in, go for the Flying Press bait, as I do need this bait to make the Aerial Ace, and they end up calling it a triple resisted call. Great play from my opponent, although I'm pretty confident that an Aerial Ace would still not take the knockout there, so I top left as I fire off the Aerial Ace, as there's just no ability for me to win that game. We move to the next match, leading into another Morpeko, and again, this is a very good matchup for HAWLUCHA. The low kicks just always out-damage the Thunder Shocks, and even after they boost up the damage by lowering my defense with the Psychic Fangs, I'm still in a very good spot. They pivot out, sending in Seaking. I get to fire off Flying Press. Flying Press does huge damage onto the very bad fish, and now we get to send in the Shadow Celio. Shadow Celio, not too worried about a drill run. Even a second drill run would not take the knockout here because Shadow Celio is incredibly bulky. The reason I brought in Celio instead of Mimikyu is I wanted a Pokemon that had fast food pressure into the Morpeko. That was very important to me because I wanted to ensure that I could get damage onto the Morpeko as it got brought in. My opponent goes for the drill run, but guess what? That doesn't take the knockout. They're forced to pivot out, and I fire off the Surf at the incoming Electrode. I believe Surf does ever so slightly more damage than a Body Slam in that scenario. I would have to double check that on PvPoke, but I do think it's pretty comparable damage either way. Now I get to bring in Mimikyu. Mimikyu will have its disguise busted by an Energy Ball from Electrode, but I can farm up and fire off the Shadow Sneak right before they're able to make their move. Shadow Sneak into the Electrode will be shielded, and at this point, I think I've just won the game. How do you beat HAWLUCHA with a shield? I don't think my opponent can. They fire off the Energy Ball, I send in HAWLUCHA, my opponent's going to farm up, they pivot into Seaking, and I don't quite know what happened there. I threw a couple fast moves, no damage was being done, and then suddenly there was a bunch of damage done and the Seaking was KO'd. This new system definitely does have its bugs. I don't know if my internet briefly disconnected and then reconnected or something, but that looked very weird. The good news is we're still going to get the win either way. We have back-to-back Flying Presses on HAWLUCHA. HAWLUCHA getting the full 1v3 sweep there with some very weird in-game strangeness. Hopping to the final match, we see once again HAWLUCHA staring down Shadow Celio. This time my opponent ends up starting behind by a turn, so I wait the turn as I make it to the Flying Press, so that way they're still able to CMP tie on the Body Slam if they want to, or they're going to be able to get a sneak. In this case, they ended up getting a sneak. I save switch into my Celio, and they're going to respond with a Shadow Quillfish. Now, I've lost my fair share of games to starting behind by a turn, so I definitely know the pain there. So when possible, I like to try and give opponents their turns back if I can notice it in time, because I'd much rather win because I ended up making a cool play, or I ended up running something interesting and that ended up core breaking my opponent, rather than the win con being my opponent being behind a turn and losing a game that they should have won. Here, we're able to shield the Shadow Ball, which works out very nicely. My opponent pivots back into the Celio, so unfortunately the Quillfish has been preserved. Body Slam will do very nice damage, but they stored so much energy on their Celio. I know that I'm going to be losing charge attack priority, but my opponent's not going to risk it, so they're just going to fire off energy. Obviously, I know I have the rank 1. They don't know I have the rank 1, so they're definitely not going to risk that. And now I can bring in Mimikyu. I believe Mimikyu should be able to absorb the Body Slam as it breaks the disguise and get a full farm down here. Body Slam, going to be doing only 1 damage through that disguise being broken, but I should get that full farm down, as I believe this can only be a Body Slam. But then I remembered, Surf and Body Slam have really good efficiency. I just get 1 shot, and now I've lost the game. Unless there's a Diggersby in the back, and there actually is a Diggersby in the back, and suddenly we still have life. I fire off the Flying Press, that does huge damage, and I think this game will come down to a 50-50. Will my opponent go for a catch? Will they go for the Fire Punch? They're going to pivot out, they send in the Quillfish. Quillfish gets low kicked down, and by the narrowest of margins, we are able to escape. I thought the game was completely lost when they were able to make it to the Surf and just KO the Mimikyu, but as it turns out, Mimikyu was dead weight in the back, and HAWLUCHA, for one final time, is able to clutch up and get us the win. All in all, I ended up having a ton of fun with this team. I just wanted to run a team that could kind of shut down a lot of the D-Gen Pokemon that I was seeing, but as it turns out, a lot of the D-Gen Pokemon are primarily in the Competitors Cup. When I went to actual OGL, I only saw 1 Mightyena. I didn't end up seeing any Bug-Bite Fortress, didn't end up seeing any Mud Slappers, although I do think it makes a bit of sense. The Competitors Cup does tend to have a lot more D-Gen Pokemon in it than the actual proper Open Great League. I do really enjoy the proper Open Great League, so I'm very happy that it's finally back. I really enjoy getting to play with the new damage registration mechanics, where you can end up getting refunded some HP if you're using a shorter turn duration move and you fire a charge attack that takes the knockout. I do find that that ends up leading to some very tactical endgames, which I really enjoy. However, the thing that they continue to need to work on is having a consistent game state in this new Open Great League meta. Like the fact that I had multiple opponents starting down turns, that's just unacceptable. That's not something that a player base is going to enjoy playing on. And so even though in my eyes it's built on better mechanics than the old system, if it's not consistent, then people are not going to want to adopt it. And granted, that's not to say the legacy system is consistent by any means. You very frequently will have 1 turn bring in, you'll very frequently have entire app freeze outs where both trainers get losses. So the old system does have its issues as well, but to get people to really buy into a new system wholeheartedly, that's the things that they're going to have to work on. And that's why I'm trying to pass as much community feedback to them as possible. And this is just purely in a volunteer role. It's something that I want to try and do to hopefully speed up the process of getting this stuff fixed, because I guess I see the vision, I see what it can be, but they have a lot of work that they need to do before they can get there. So, enough yapping from me. Final thoughts. HAWLUCHA was fun. It's not a Pokemon I would recommend if you're looking to gain Elo. If you're looking for like a strong, consistent climbing team, something like Galarian Corsola, Shadow Celio, Tinkaton would probably just shred through a bunch of teams. I don't know whose team that is. I've seen a lot of people play it, but it seems like a strong, staple meta team. But if you're just looking to blow off some steam and hopefully ruin some Mightyena player's day, then I think that HAWLUCHA could be very fun. I did only end up seeing 1 Mightyena, but as we saw from game number 1, they ended up having a pretty rough day in that battle. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.